Hello viewers, welcome to Newsweek South Asia, a show where we will provide you fresh insights into South Asia's geopolitical, strategic and security situation. Let's take a look at the headlines first. Indian security forces avenge Ganderbal terror attack, kill LAT terrorist. Sectarian violence in Gulf's Kurram district, government fails to act. And rising violence against minorities deepens Bangladesh's religious divide. In Jammu and Kashmir, Indian security forces continue to dismantle the web of Pakistan-backed terrorism that has undermined peace in the region for decades. In a significant breakthrough, a top Pakistan-backed Lashkar-e-Taiba commander involved in the brutal Ganderbal attack was neutralized in Srinagar. This success underscores India's unwavering commitment to safeguarding its citizens and uprooting the menace of cross-border terrorism perpetuated by Pakistan. A report. A month after the horrific October 20th attack in Ganderbal district, where 7 construction workers were brutally gunned down, Indian security forces tracked down and neutralized Junaid Ahmed Bhatt, a key Lashkar commander. The encounter took place in Srinagar's Dachigam forest area on October-December 3rd, following a meticulously planned operation by the police and army. Acting on credible intelligence about terrorist activity, the joint forces launched a midnight raid, successfully eliminating the terrorist after an intense gunfight.
ये जो किल टेररिस्ट है इसकी शिनाख्त LAT तंजीम से वाबस्ता रहा है। इसका नाम जुनैद भट्ट है जो कि कुलगाम का रहने वाला है और कल जो ऑपरेशन हुआ उसमें ये मार गिराया गया। ये पिछले साल लगभग मिड ऑफ लास्ट ईयर जुलाई से ही LAT तंजीम में सक्रिय था और इसकी इन्वॉल्वमेंट क्योंकि गगनगीर अटैक में आई थी तो सुरक्षा बलों ने इसको मार गिराया।
The October attack targeted a construction site in Ganderbal, killing 7 workers, including a doctor from Budgam. The victims were part of a critical infrastructure project, constructing tunnels that would provide all-weather connectivity to the strategically vital Ladakh region bordering both China and Pakistan. Investigations revealed that the terrorists supported and trained in Pakistan aim to disrupt economic development and spread fear in the region. Despite Pakistan's consistent denials, its support for terror groups is evident through active training camps, logistical backing, and financial networks operating across the border. These acts are a continuation of Pakistan's long-standing proxy war against India, aimed at keeping the region destabilized.
The problem with Pakistan is that it is now a failed state. It has nothing to show to the world except that it is an exporter of terrorism and that it is doing so by trying to send the terrorists into Kashmir Valley and tell the world or try to portray to the world that look, Jammu and Kashmir is not safe, it is disturbed and the people over there, they want independence. Whereas on ground reality what it is Pakistan itself is in a deep crisis.
India, however, remains resolute. A comprehensive counter-terrorism framework has been implemented to thwart Pakistan's malign activities. The Border Security Force intercepts drones smuggling weapons and drugs into Indian territory, while the National Investigation Agency systematically dismantles terror funding networks. Intelligence-driven operations by Indian security forces have neutralized numerous terrorists, crippling their ability to act. While Pakistan's proxies continue their attempts to incite violence, India's proactive measures, bolstered by the determination of its security forces, have been effective in neutralizing threats and thwarting terror plots. Religious tensions in Bangladesh are reaching alarming levels, with minorities bearing the brunt of increasing violence and discrimination. The recent assault on a lawyer defending Hindu monk Chinmoy Krishna underscores the dangers faced by those advocating for minority rights. Das's arrest on sedition charges has further ignited fears, as hundreds of violent incidents targeting the Hindu community have been reported since August. The international community, including UK lawmakers, is now voicing serious concerns over the worsening crisis. There is more on this troubling development. A Bangladeshi lawyer who was defending Hindu monk Chinmoy Krishna has been brutally attacked by Islamists at his home. The lawyer is now in the intensive care unit fighting for his life. ISKCON India, which reported the attack, describes it as a sign of the growing dangers faced by those defending the rights of religious minorities in Bangladesh. This attack follows a series of violent incidents in Bangladesh following the monk's arrest. Arrested on November 25th at Dhaka airport, Chinmoy Krishna is facing sedition charges for allegedly disrespecting Bangladesh's national flag during a rally in October. According to reports, lawyers denied appearing for him during the bail hearing in a court. The charges and his arrest have sparked controversy and fear for the safety of religious minorities in the country. The incident has added to the growing tensions between India and Bangladesh, which have been escalating following the ouster of Sheikh Hasina. While India has raised concerns over the situation, the international community is beginning to condemn the violence. Recently, British MPs brought up the violence against Bangladesh Hindus in the UK Parliament.
Since the fall of the previous government in August of this year, Bangladesh has seen more than 2,000 incidents of violence, most of which have been targeted against the minority Hindu community. Hindus make up less than 10% of the Bangladesh population, and my honourable friend will be aware that anti-Hindu violence has been a recurrent event in the country, and indeed the Jammu-e-Islami party was earlier this year banned after riots in which 200 people were killed. But whilst Bangladesh no longer has the secular constitution of 1971 and became an Islamic state in 1988, there are nonetheless supposed to be protections for minority religions under Articles 28, 39 and others of the constitution. These appear not to be being enforced.
In response to the deteriorating situation and arrest of Hindu religious leader, Bangladeshi feminist author Taslima Nasreen, who was forced to flee the country for her outspoken writings, expressed her concerns on social media. She pointed out the double standards in the country's approach to flags, highlighting how the placement of the saffron flag above the Bangladeshi flag is deemed treasonous, while the flag of the extremist group Hizb ut-Tahrir, when placed above national flag, is considered patriotic. Meanwhile, protests against the treatment of minorities in Bangladesh are being held across India, drawing attention to the growing repression. UK MP Priti Patel has called for the British Parliament to outline its engagement with Bangladesh on this critical issue.
The degree of escalation in the violence is deeply, deeply concerning. And what we are witnessing now is just uncontrolled violence in many quarters. And we are now watching with horror and shock as further violence is spread in Bangladesh. And all our thoughts in this House are most definitely with the diaspora community here and those who are affected in Bangladesh. These are deeply disturbing reports. So given the current instability in Bangladesh and since the departure of the former Prime Minister in August, this is a moment of deep concern. Many governments are condemning the violence and calling for peace and law and order to be restored. So I welcome the comments from the Minister, but I must emphasise that all efforts must be taken now.
As international pressure mounts, the situation in Bangladesh remains tense, with religious minorities facing an increasingly hostile environment. The attacks and arrests are a stark reminder of the dangerous climate for those advocating for religious freedom and human rights in the country. Pakistan's Kurram district descends further into chaos as sectarian violence ravages the region unchecked. Over 130 lives have been lost in just 10 days, with Shia Muslims targeted in brazen attacks, even under military and police escort. The ambush in Lower Kurram's Ochat area exposes a fractured nation where fragile ceasefires fail and the state's promises of protection ring hollow, leaving vulnerable communities to fend for themselves amid growing despair. A report.
Deadly sectarian violence continues to ravage Pakistan's northwestern Kurram district, where over 130 lives have been lost in the past 10 days, despite a tentative ceasefire. The latest ambush on 2 passenger vans in Lower Kurram's Ochat area highlights the perilous plight of Shia Muslims under militant attacks, even with police and military escorts. The victims, mostly Shia Muslims traveling from Parachinar, were attacked as their convoy entered Sunni-majority villages. Disturbing footage from the scene reveals the horrifying aftermath: blood-soaked streets, destroyed vehicles, and grief-stricken survivors. Parachinar resident Nasir Hussain condemned the state's inability to ensure safety.
پرون کومه دلهراش واقع شوی دی او د مین روډ نه سکیورټي حصار کې صدی کې کومه کنوایی و هغه آرمی او د پولیس اف سی نگرانی کې کار خود سیده سیده دغه علاقې کې بار بار واقعیات کیږي مین روډ دی د ریاست ذمہ داری دی د روډ کلیر کی او د کومه کروي شوی دی په کار دی فورن د کومه ناصر دی د شتګر د ناصر د کروي وشي د فورن ونیول شي.
Pakistan's military has faced harsh criticism for its handling of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's volatile tribal regions. Over the years, the military's alliances with tribal factions, many harboring Sunni extremist sympathizers, have exacerbated sectarian tensions. Instead of fostering stability, these partnerships have emboldened extremist militias like the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, Hafiz Gul Bahadur faction, and others, fueling the rise of violence as a tool of dominance. Hospitals in Parachinar struggle to manage the fallout.
روان دي سچويشن چې کوم جاری دی په دې کې لګبګ 50 کسان موږ سره کوم دي هغه ډیډ بوډیز ریسیو شوي دي او تقریبا 100 نه زیات چې کوم دي هغه موږ سره زخمیان دي. زخمیانو کې ډیر داسې و چې هغه موږ کور ته ولېږلو، کوم چې سیریس وو هغه موږ مینیج کړي دي، هغه مو ریټین کړي دي، هغه ټریټمنټ روان دی، هغه چې کوم سرجریز دی هغه ډے نایټ 24/7 موږ هغه سرجریز جاری ساتلي دي هغه سره د وجې نه.
Kurram district, bordering Afghanistan, has long been a flashpoint for sectarian strife. The influence of militant groups linked to the Afghan Taliban further destabilizes the region, exploiting the Sunni-Shia divide for their agendas. The Shia community in Kurram remains under siege, trapped in a cycle of fear and violence. Despite government assurances, Pakistan's fractured governance and failure to act decisively against rising extremism have left its citizens vulnerable to the unchecked power of radicalized factions. The devastating events in Kurram serve as a stark reminder of Pakistan's growing inability to protect its citizens. As the death toll climbs and despair grows, the pressing question remains: will the state finally act, or will it allow sectarian militias to continue tearing the nation apart?
Pakistan's electricity crisis continues to devastate millions of families across the country. with soaring power bills, endless power cuts, and an economy in freefall. In cities like Karachi, the situation has reached a breaking point, leaving people desperate and frustrated. With power outages lasting up to 18 hours in rural areas and 10 hours in cities, Pakistan's power sector is a tale of mismanagement, inefficiency and exploitation. Here's more on this escalating disaster.
Across Pakistan, the energy crisis is deepening. In Karachi, the country's largest city, citizens are struggling with excessive bills and unreliable services from K Electric, the city's main power supplier. Over the past year, many residents have faced bills exceeding 75,000 rupees despite enduring daily power cuts.
पहचान बिजली का बिल तो इतना देते हैं हमारा 100 से ज़्यादा सही है ना और बिजली तो माशाल्लाह अभी भी नहीं है हमारे पास अभी इन लोगों ने बिल भेजा है 75,000 रुपये काम बिल है नहीं कारोबार नहीं है बंदा भूख से मर रहे 75,000 भरे क्या बच्चों को पाले क्या कह रहे बंदा कारोबार तुम्हारे सामने नज़र आ रहा है इधर मच्छर मार रहा है बाकी तो कारोबार तो नहीं है ये हमारा सिंध गवर्नमेंट को चाहिए कम से कम बिजली का बिल क्या है ये कलेक्टर तो यही माफिया है भाई इनको चाहिए कुंडाला चलाते ये लोग हर चीज़ ये करते खुद कुंडे लगवाते खुद ही सब कुछ करते
The people of Karachi are not alone in their misery. The entire country is bearing the brunt of Pakistan's catastrophic energy policies. The cost of electricity has surged by an eye-watering 155% since 2021, a direct result of the government's scramble to meet IMF loan conditions. The average cost of electricity now stands at $0.23 per unit, making it one of the most expensive in the region. Meanwhile, residents face blackouts, power theft, and massive losses in the grid due to systemic corruption and inefficiencies.
बिजली नहीं आता है बिजली की लोड शेडिंग है बिल 10,000 रुपये आ रहा है गरीब बंदे हैं कैसे भरेंगे 500 रुपये दिहाड़ी है हम कैसे भरेंगे गरीब आदमी है इनको कहें बिल का 500 रुपये दिहाड़ी है बिजली का बिल का खर्चा कुछ कम करें और गरीबों की इमदाद करें थोड़ा बिजली कम करें और मीटर ले जाएं बस मीटर आप ये खुद ही ले जाएं बस यही मेहरबानी करें हम नहीं भर सकते बिल गरीब आदमी है
Pakistan's power crisis is rooted in decades of mismanagement. The infamous 1994 Independent Power Producers Policy shifted control of the energy sector to private hands, promising foreign investment. But it instead resulted in an entrenched system that forces consumers to pay for idle power plants, creating massive financial burdens for the public. To make matters worse, Pakistan's energy sector is drowning in a staggering 2.3 trillion rupees in circular debt, with transmission losses and theft further compounding the problem. A shocking 16% of the electricity generated is lost before it even reaches consumers, an alarming reflection of the government's failure to maintain basic infrastructure. As Pakistan grapples with one of the worst energy crises in its history, millions of citizens are left without power, unable to pay crippling bills and suffering under a government that has failed them at every turn.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We'll be back next week with more news, views and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@anin.com. This is Shivangi Mishra signing off on behalf of the entire production team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.